Hey folks, Matt Sharp here with another Pacific Angler Friday Fishing Report. We're filming for the Easter long weekend. If it's nowhere near the Easter long weekend, click up here. This is a link to all the Friday Fishing Reports. We do it most weeks, so I should have something more up to date for you. Big week. It is going to rain like stink, and that is a good thing. Well, a good thing if you aren't out Easter egg hunting. My daughter is going to be sad, but as a fisherman in the British Columbia area, you should be excited because all our rivers need the water, and it could be really cool for the back end of the spring season when it comes to fishing the Squamish, the Harrison, or the Chilliwack River. We're going to talk about that in the middle of the report. What else? Well, ice is coming off. It's been slow. It's been a little bit behind schedule, but we're going to share some tips on the resources that I look at to tell whether a lake is iced off or iced on. And we're going to talk a little bit about the problem that has come up with winter kill this season because of the very strange fall season that we had last year. Went from very hot to very cold really quickly, and that has caused some problems. But the good news is we're already hearing good reports on the lakes that didn't winter kill, and it's well worth planning your trip now if you want to catch that window before turnover. We're going to talk about that in detail, a little bit of timing notes, as well as we're going to go over some of the flies specifically for ice off, and I'm going to walk you guys through what's in my box this season, what's changed from previous seasons, because there's some new additions in there that I am pretty excited about trying. As always, you want to see more fishing reports like this. Consider hitting the like button, hit the subscribe button. Let's get into it. All right, everybody. Cheers to Friday. Cheers to a long weekend. I'm drinking dark matter right now. Thanks, Mike Kleiman. Dropped these off on the guided trip where we didn't catch anything. It was challenging to say the least last weekend. But we toughed it out, had some great guys, and the river reports got better after the weekend. I heard a bunch of very, very good anglers out both up the Chilliwack Way and the Sea to Skyway had trouble because it got pretty darn cold last weekend. Yeah, a few fish were caught, but we heard much better reports come Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday this week, and that leads us into the weather. We're going to start right off with that. I'm going to talk about the lake stuff in a second, but let's just pull up the weather because things are changing. We've got... this is Squamish, but I've got 10 to 15 Friday as you guys are watching this. Full disclosure, I'm filming Thursday night. Weatherman doesn't always get it right, but if he's forecasting what I see here, it could be very good Friday, Saturday as the water rises but doesn't go too hard. I am a little concerned about Sunday and Monday, but if it doesn't blow out on all the river systems around the lower mainland, it's probably going to be the first time that those rivers have seen a bump in water, and we expect it to turn all the fish on as well as increase the water temperature. One thing we have to remember is that when the water's low, it's actually really cold because it's coming straight off the glaciers. Rain is actually way warmer than the snowmelt, and so we usually see a degree or two jump when it comes to rainwater, and that can absolutely trigger a bite when it comes to bull trout, cutthroat, or heck, even steelhead. And we did see some solid reports for all three this week. So if you want to head out, I'd say this is the time to go if you're willing to get wet. If you aren't willing to get wet, you want to drag your heels, early next week to mid next week should be some of the better conditions we've seen all season. So it's well worth getting out there. Couple notes on those fisheries. The Harrison hasn't been good. All the reports I've been hearing has been of very low fry numbers in the main river. And because of that, fishing has been super intermittent. We're hopeful this weekend that things are going to change. A bunch of folks are heading out that way. On the Squamish front, like I said, I went out last weekend and I froze my butt off. It was challenging, but the boys were out Monday, Tuesday, and there were some fish to be had, which was pretty cool. And I'm hopeful that things are going to turn on that front. On the Chilliwack, it is late season. There are some regs changed. Links down in the description to the written version of the report if you want to see where you're allowed to fish and where you aren't allowed to fish. But if you've given up on steelhead, it's probably a good time to take one more kick at the can this year. And after this rain, or as this rain moves the river around, I really think it's well worth getting out. So even though you're going to have to wear the rain jackets this Easter, I think it's worth fishing. Okay, let's talk about the lakes, because that's where everyone's mind going, and my mind is going that direction as well. And we're going to talk about a couple things. The first one is obviously we're close to ice off, and one of my favorite ways to look at ice off is a website called Sentinel Playground. I don't really understand it. I really don't know the history on it, but it's basically a website, much like Google Earth, but that has very up-to-date satellite image. It's not anywhere as close to the detail that you might get from Gaia or Google Earth or Google Maps, but it's up to date. And so what we can use that for is seeing if a lake is iced off. And so all you're going to type in Google Sentinel Playground. It's going to pop up here, and a couple tips on using it. It's just like using Google Maps, but I learned this one yesterday. It's sort of weird. It throws the satellite image that you're using over top of whatever you're looking at. So if you go up here to the right-hand side of the screen, I'll put it up here. You click on this, and then you actually click off a satellite mode. I didn't know that could be a thing, thanks to the gentleman who showed that to me. Very useful. We can dial in where we want to go. So let's take a look down at Kamloops, and let's look at one that I know is off, and that is Morgan. And you can see down here, and then we can pop on the satellite. As long as it wasn't covered in cloud at that given day, we can see clearly. Now you want to throw that out to a couple other lakes that we like. Well, let's go down here, and here we've got Stump Lake, for example, and at least as of filming this, let's see if it refreshes. There we go. It's still iced on, but I see a lot of open water at the north and south end sort of creeping in there, so we are darned close. Now, take a look at that. Pick your favorite lake. I'm not going to list off a whole bunch of lakes to go hit, but I will say there's another resource that's amazing, and I think they deserve our support, and that's the BC Fly Guys. They've had a forum for years, and they do an ice off report. You do have to make a donation, but it's like, I want to say like $6 or $7. Don't quote me on that, but it's not a lot of money, and their ice off report is amazing. They go through by elevation and they go through by lake, catching all the reports from everybody out there and bringing it all into one place. They also have a list going on right now that is a tentative list to winter kill. And what's winter kill? Well, a lot of these lakes, when the ice goes on, they don't have enough oxygen under the lakes to support rainbows. I'm not going to get into the biology side of things, but the long story short is this year we have seen a concerning low level of oxygen in a lot of our lakes, and most people are contributing it to the fact that things were super hot right to the end of the fall. Ice came on, and all the nutrients in those lakes didn't have time to sort of die down, and then it was dying and sucking the oxygen out of the water. So even some lakes with aerators have seen issues with winter kill. It's really hard to tell from the tests, but they're basically drilling holes through the ice to see what the oxygen levels are. But you'd have to do it on a pretty huge sample size to guarantee that a given lake didn't have a pocket of oxygenated water. Long story short is you're going to want to stay tuned and make sure that your lake isn't on the list or didn't have a winter kill issue before you head up. Little note that if your lake has a history of winter kill, maybe 4 or 5 years ago it killed or 10 years ago it killed, I'd keep a close eye on it because it's looking as though most of the lakes that have a problem with oxygen had a problem with oxygen this year and aren't doing well. That said, there's a whole bunch that are fine and are going to be awesome, and we're super excited as this comes off. So, flyguys.net and Sentinel Playground, super useful to plan your trip. Now, a little timing note on ice off. It is usually, and don't quote me on this, 10 days of ice free before we get what is called turnover, when everything turns over in the lake because of a relationship with the oxygenated water on top versus the colder water down on the bottom. Or did I get that backwards? Again, I'm not a biologist, but the lake basically flips over and turns into a pea soup and makes fishing very challenging. The rule of thumb is the first 10 days after ice off, as long as the water is stable, is debatably some of the best fishing of the season. We're going to talk about what flies and what strategies use in a second here. And then we've got to wait probably about 3 to 4 weeks after ice off before things settle down. And then we're into the honeymoon phase of a given lake throughout the season, where we have an extended period of maybe 5 to even 6 weeks of really, really great fishing as chronomins start hatching, as the bugs really start to get going. So that's a quick rule. You see your lake ice off, set the timer, and you know that you have a window in the beginning, and then you're going to have to be concerned on sort of day 7 to day 15 that you might walk into a turnover, and then it's probably going to be about 10 days after that that you can consider things clearing up. Okay. Now, let's talk about flies for a bit. So I'm going to come out with a video really quickly on some new flies that I've thrown into my fly box. I'm also going to look at what's in here, which is my lake fishing kit. What I bring along with me, the bare essentials, and some really cool stuff that I've sort of added over the last 2 or 3 seasons as we've got more and more into the interior lake fishing. That video is coming up. If I've got it, I'll put a link up here and I'll put it at the back end of the report as well, but give me a day or two to get that uploaded. Cole's notes on that video. When it comes to ice off, we want to do a lot of sort of attractory style patterns and note that the fish will be very close to shore because they want that high oxygenated water. They also are very hungry, which is awesome. It's very common that you can literally stand on the shore of a lake and not have to worry about getting out on a boat and do well. It's one of the only times of the year where the weed and mud hasn't built up so much that that's doable. Throwing balanced style patterns from shore, balanced style patterns from your boat in the shallows, meaning vampire leeches, meaning leech presentations, meaning attractor style patterns like boobies and blobs is extremely effective because bugs haven't really started to get going. The other one to give a shout is bloodworms, as well as maybe even baby damsels and or something larger like a dragonfly nymph. It's going to be able to cover some water, and I love using this early season. Loud, proud, cover water, and you're going to be in the game. If you find the spot where there's enough oxygen and the fish are moving, it can be fast and furious before that turnover. When we do hit that turnover, things become challenging. Blobs do well. If you get hit in a pea soup, I would recommend to maybe consider changing lakes. And then as it clears up, things get really good, and we usually see the first major chironomid hatches of the season in that time frame, and all the usual suspects will work then. Blobs under an indicator, balanced leeches under an indicator, and then cross your fingers for that chironomid hatch. And usually they're reasonably small, but every lake is a little bit different on that front. In that next video, I'm going to show you a couple of really cool patterns that we've been playing with, that we've built, as well as some friends have brought into the shop that are now for sale. Our fly lake game has increased exponentially over the last 5 to 6 years, so you want to check that video out. Okay, last one. I haven't forgot about any saltwater guys. It's a little bit depressing, but yes, the regs are the same as last year, meaning most of our areas around the Vancouver area are closed to Chinook retention. Links down in the description. Look at the last Friday Fishing Report. We go over it in detail there so you can get through the nitty-gritty, badly formatted regulations that are out there. We're crossing our fingers that around the 15th, we will see a pilot marked selective fishery announced in certain areas around Vancouver that will allow us to target stocks of non-concern in areas that whales do not go for fish that are from a hatchery and are not part of the genetic makeup of fish that we want to come back and spawn. I'm not holding my breath. I've been disappointed before, but stay tuned to the Friday Fishing Report. I will update as quickly as we have information. If you aren't subscribed to the newsletter, make sure you are. We'll have that information coming out as soon as we get it, and let's all cross our fingers that we can get out there and enjoy the resource, be in touch with the resource, be in touch with the whales, be in touch with the ecosystem in a way that has zero impact on it, and that the ENGOs and the politicians don't get in the way of that. All right, that's everything I've got for everybody this week. I'm going to put that video on the lake patterns up here if it's out. If not, I'll throw my old lake pattern video. It's got some cool patterns in it as well. And I'm going to throw some steelhead videos down here because why not? It's in that season and it's definitely go time. As always, you want to see more reports like this, consider hitting the like button, hit the subscribe button. I'm going to catch you in 2 weeks.